Uh, so welcome everyone to the September 21st, 2021 Wenham Select Board meeting. Call the meeting to order at 6:30. This meeting is being recorded. It is being shown on Zoom. All our votes will be roll call votes. We have the entire select board here, as well as our town administrator, Ryan Ferrara, and recording secretary, Catherine Tinsley, staff, Jackie Bresnahan, and I think our police chief is on as well. So as we do, we will begin our meeting with a few minutes of the possibility, or we welcome public input. I always try to talk slowly. So if you have a comment, if you're out there and you'd like to comment, please put your name in the chat. Nobody. Okay, well, we'll move along then to our announcements, which Ryan, if you would be so kind.
Sure. So just a quick reminder for everybody who may be watching for our board and committee openings. We've got one opening on the Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media. We've got two openings on the Iron Rail Commission, one opening on the Wenham Human Rights Committee, and two openings on the WISH Committee. They are 2 3-year terms for the WISH Committee. Town Government Study Committee, wanted to let everybody know on October 21st, the Forum for Resident Feedback for Town Government Study Committee is going to be taking place. The survey and more details to be released soon. However, I do believe the survey may already be out there. So Jackie, I don't know if that's been posted yet. I know I'm going to the meeting on Thursday, but please check on the town website, and when that is ready to go, you will the public will see that as a highlighted item for you that you won't be able to miss. Okay. Special election news. Our special election primary is scheduled for November 2nd, and the election is scheduled for November 30th. I would note that this is for Representative Brad Hill's seat. We had 2 conversations today already. Even though he's left his seat formally, he's still taking care of constituent issues. And suffice to say, Brad's a special guy and is really dedicated to this district. And as we had said in our last meeting, will be deeply missed. So, so our thanks to Brad for all his help on that front. We also want to make an announcement that the Wednesdays from 3:30 to 6:30, we're at the Hamilton Senior Center. The towns are working together to provide COVID-19 vaccines. Walk-ins are welcome, and this is free and open to the public. So any other questions on that, you can feel free to contact the Hamilton or Wenham Board of Health. So that's good. Reports. We had our, I'll start off here just on my item. We had our goals meeting with the board this past weekend. We're able to do it close to our allotted time, which was great. Jackie and I have been going through that list and following up on a lot of those items, and it's keeping us busy and trying to a lot of things that came out of that meeting and for us to follow up on. A few items that I did want to let you know about. Did receive an update today from our legislative delegation about a few items. One of them was the recall legislation, and the update there is that the House bill as of yesterday was read and is in place, and hopefully will be taken back up on Thursday in Thursday's session. So that's making some progress. There were a few other items that I shared with the board earlier, and that were kind of more sort of miscellaneous in nature, but the biggest item was, of course, the recall piece that we were discussing. One thing I wanted to hit on, as I mentioned earlier, I did have a conversation with Representative Hill earlier, and one of the things, as you know, you've seen the chief on this call. We're just going to be talking a little bit about the Bridge Academy costs and cost of training some of our reserve officers. But one of the things that that was made clear, and some things we followed up on with our legislative delegation, was to ask whether or not the legislature would be covering any of these costs associated with these reserve Bridge Academy students. And other than covering the cost of the so-called training, which, as I understand, that is basically Zoom classes, there really isn't any other measures or steps afoot as of yet to make up for this gap. And I think what the chief will be highlighting in his report will be that there'll be costs potentially to the tune of $174,000 that we may be incurring as a result of the police reform legislation. So this update that we're going to be receiving later tonight is really more of a kickoff to a way to highlight this issue for the board and make you aware of it. But this is going to be the first step in many, and in terms of how we then respond to this, because we are certainly not alone as a municipality who has reserve officers. Reserve officers are an important part of how we protect the public here. So we're going to be doing some more work with our legislative delegation, probably with the MMA as well, and trying to counter some of these impacts potentially that'll take place potentially with Wenham. So it's no small thing. And I would say that Representative Brad Hill was indicative that this is one of the main reasons he voted against it. He knew how expensive this would be and the cost would be for the communities, and that day of reckoning appears to be upon us. So with that said, that pretty much sums up what I have that I wanted to highlight for the board, and I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, any questions for Ryan before I have my not very much of a report? I was really just going to highlight and thank the board for the time that we had together at our workshop on Saturday. It always seemed as if we could use a lot more time, but we were pretty efficient. We'll certainly have some follow-up conversations, and thank you to Ryan and Jackie for keeping track of some of the follow-ups. But that's really all I have for a chair's report, unless there are any questions. And if not, Gary or Diane, have anything you want to talk about in particular? Right.
I was just going to add in that Diane and myself were at the Sunday fair, and certainly it was well attended. And I hope everyone enjoyed the good weather out there, especially the children's booths at the Wenham Museum. Outstanding setups, and I think Diane will echo, because she was one of the judges. What did you think of the kids' projects?
Kids' projects were unbelievable. The kids were so interested and involved and presented themselves very well. As a judge, it was pretty hard to judge them. They were all so clever and so cute, and it looks like a great idea to continue doing something like that for the kids. But the dog parade was pretty good too. I heard you enjoyed that.
Yes, they had, it wasn't not just dogs, but there were donkeys, miniature horses, as well as the dogs in the parade.
I'm guessing that might have been the Hamilton side of the.
Yes, the Hamilton side.
Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah.
the Great Dane was the tallest of them all, even beyond the donkeys and horses.
Yeah.
I
Well,
do
it
have
sounds
one
like it
other
was fun.
thing that
Yeah.
I wanted to mention to Ryan, as far as that police, the Bridge Academy, et cetera, maybe we can talk more with Chief DiNapoli, but because it's an unfunded mandate, I think that maybe, I don't know whether it'd be the Police Association or the MMA can reach out to maybe the state auditor to, maybe to assist with some of those unfunded mandates like they do sometimes with elections.
Right.
Just an idea.
I think that in this instance, Diane, what the legislature has done in this case is that it's created, such a cost that, it's one thing to cover the costs for early voting, or a special election, but that what this is, the scope of it statewide, just as each one of our 350 other communities are looking at it, it's going to be a substantial price tag that the communities are going to be expected to pick up. So I agree with you. We're going to have to definitely be doing a lot of outreach. It's just that considering the scope And I believe the legislature only set aside $1 million to assist communities in the implementation of that. So it doesn't even come close to what we're looking at potential costs on our end, or at least statewide for other communities of our size who regularly relying on reserve officers. So no question, Diane, we'll be pressing whatever, making whatever calls and pressing whatever buttons we can to get support in this area. Yeah, so thank you.
Okay, there's nothing else. We have next our consent agenda with minutes.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of September 8th, 2021, open session 1, and September 8th, 2021, executive session. I'm confused, open session 2, we had 2 sessions, and hold the executive minutes of that date. Jackie,
second.
what did I just say?
So the clarification is that we had a scheduled executive session and open session on September 8th, but we needed to go into open session at the very beginning to allow you to vote to go into executive session, thus creating 2 open sessions and 1 executive session in one night.
I understand it. Yeah, perfect. Does that make sense to everybody else?
Yep.
Okay.
Gary, did I hear a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Any comments or corrections or edits to these minutes? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Diane,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. Another stellar job by Catherine Tinsley.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have a number of appointments on our agenda tonight. Few require a little bit of explanation. One actually gives us a choice, but this one under new business is for the Cultural Council. I'll let you just introduce it, I guess, Brian. I think that's what we've been doing.
Sure. So as we have been doing regularly on with our board meetings, we've been bringing forward appointments for and to fill in gaps where necessary. And as you said, Catherine, these are this is the Cultural Council to replace 2 seats for 3-year terms. So this is for Lauren Condalzo and Janet Glasser.
Okay, so I guess maybe we'll have a motion first, and then if we have any comments or questions, we can do that
Right.
before we vote.
so move to appoint Lauren Consolazio and Janet Glasser to 3-year terms on the Cultural Council from September 21st, 2021 until June 30th, 2024.
Second it.
Anyone have anything they'd like to say or comment on this particular set of appointments?
Always glad to have volunteers.
Yes, and it's nice to have that be I think that will fill that council, so that's great. If we're ready, we'll, I guess, move to a vote. Diane,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes,
Catherine, yes. So thank you, Lauren and Janet. I'm sure you'll be hearing from our town clerk soon. The next one is the Community Preservation Committee. And maybe I'll just continue on with this one. If I, Ryan, there is 1 seat, an at-large position. Folks may remember the Community Preservation Committee, I believe, has some number of members, I want to say 4 or 5, that are from other committees, Concom, et cetera. And then there are, I think, 4 at-large positions, which we appoint. At the moment, there's 1 seat open, and we've been fortunate enough to have 2 letters of interest from 2 different folks. One is from Alden Drake, and the second is from Trudy Reed. We have only 1 position, however. So I think what we've done in the past with these is just sort of do a little round robin, and each of us will just state who we think would be the best fit at this particular time and why, and then we'll go ahead and if there's a consensus or a majority in that kind of straw poll, we'll move to a motion. Diane or Gary, either one of you want to start with this? Okay,
I can
Gary.
then. All right.
Okay, Gary.
So, we've seen both resumes, both very well qualified, but I'd like to, I think I would favor Alden Drake primarily because he'd be a new acquisition to municipal government. And I know Trudy Reed has a strong record, been a town clerk and so forth, but Alden, I think be good to get additional people involved in municipal government. And for those that didn't see the resume, Alden's, city planner, construction supervisor, certified financial planner. So I think he has the information there from his long career that make him a good judge of CPC projects.
So I would second that as well for similar reasons. I think both are very, very capable and very prepared to take on the position, but I did want to bring somebody new in. I know Trudy's the town clerk right now and she's on the COA board too. So I thought maybe if we grab a newbie, it'd be a nice thing to do.
I think this one will once we make this motion, it will end up being unanimous. I again, both very highly qualified candidates. I've known Alden for a while and I literally have tried to recruit him for various things over the years because I know I believe he's very qualified for a lot of things, but he's, for whatever reason, always been too busy. So I kind of stopped trying to recruit him and I was very pleased and surprised that he put in a letter of interest for this committee. So at this time, to have someone new on CPC, I think would be a good thing to do.
All right.
So with that, maybe a motion, huh?
Move to appoint Alden Drake to a 3-year term at large on the Community Preservation Committee from September 21st, 2021 until June 30th, 2024.
I second that.
I'm going to assume there are no further comments. If not, we'll move to a vote. Diane?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And Catherine, yes. So congratulations, Alden. I think Trudy's probably, there's a little bit of Trudy that's saying, oh, maybe this is a good thing. I was pretty busy. So thank you to both of them for their letters of interest.
Yeah.
Ryan, I'll let you introduce
Sure.
this one, please.
Thanks, Catherine. So this is something I had reached out to Catherine earlier today. I spoke with Jim Reynolds. There are a couple members of the Council on Aging who have expressed to Jim their intention to resign from the Council on Aging. And if that were to happen, then Karen could then come up as a full member. However, we have yet to receive those letters of resignation, and our suggestion tonight to the board is to pass on this, hopefully to your October 5th meeting, and then potentially you'd be able to appoint Karen Anger as a full member of the Council on Aging.
Great. I just have one question. I couldn't find the document that allowed for associate members of the Council on Aging board. If anyone knows what document that is, it's not really critical at this point, but I just wasn't familiar with that. So if anyone has a charge.
I can ask about that, Catherine, and see what I can
yeah.
get from
Diane.
Trudy.
It
Okay.
might be in their bylaws. The COA has a small set of bylaws.
Okay.
Yeah, I just couldn't find anything online. So anyway, with everyone's permission, it does seem like the right thing to do to let dust settle a little bit and postpone this one to a later date. We'll move on to our next appointment. And Brian, if you would introduce this.
Sure.
One.
So this is for election for our election warrant position. The request from our town clerk is to appoint Dorothy Goldie. Now, I think that we have some options in terms of years. Jackie, I'll have to lean on you for this one. For the duration of the term, and the reason for that is?
So I was not able to connect with Trudy today. So at this point, it would be through June 30th. We just need someone appointed so that they can start preparations for the upcoming November election cycle with the special elections. So if the board doesn't mind doing through June 30th, and then we can hopefully revisit this for potentially either another year or a longer term, as recommended by the town clerk in the spring. But I know that they're eager to start preparations for the upcoming November special process.
So that
motion
makes it,
then?
yeah, for, I guess, an 8-month term,
Yeah.
if I counted that right.
So move to appoint Dorothy Goody to a 8-month term as election warden from 21 September 2021 until 30 June 2022.
Second that, definitely.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that as well. And I think it's, if I remember correctly, I believe we should probably be also thanking Pat Purdy. I think she was the election warden before this and for a number of years. So we want to thank her. And I think we're going to be welcoming Dorothy Gowdy. If there's nothing else, I think we need to vote still.
Okay.
Gary,
All right.
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Catherine, yes. Okay, the next one is going to require someone else to.
Mhm. Sure.
um,
I'll start and then I'm going to pass it over to Chief DiNapoli. So this is a request for basically a new position in the PD. In this case, Michael Perry is a longtime reserve officer who has been very useful to the department in terms of his connection with Beverly Hospital and making sure that our vehicles are been kept up to speed with all of the medical equipment that we need, as well as any other equipment on that front. So this is sort of basically a continuation of what Mr. Perry has been doing for the department as an officer, but because of his retirement, we now have to, we still want to retain him, and he's still willing to continue on with us. So Chief, I'll turn it over to you to correct anything I may have miscategorized.
No, you hit it right. Good evening, everybody. We're real
Hi.
lucky to have Mike willing and able to stay on board with us. He's an incredible help. The job description doesn't spell out half of what he does, and you know, the fact that we're able to keep him on board, basically, as Ryan mentioned, doing so much of what he's been doing for the last almost 40 some odd years as a reserve patrol officer. And he wants to be a part of the team still, and we're certainly happy to have him.
That's great. Comments or questions, or are we ready for a motion? Sounds like maybe a motion.
All right,
Gary.
we're good. All right. Move to appoint Michael Perry to a 1-year term as the inventory control specialist from September 21st, 2021 until June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, I think we thank you for that background, Chief DiNapoli, and I think we're ready for a vote. Gary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Catherine, yes. So unanimous. Thank you, Michael Perry. He thought he retired, but this, from the job description, it looks like he's still got plenty to do. Okay. Next, we have an introduction of someone with a new position. So
Yeah, I'm super excited and proud to introduce Officer Chad Labrie as our new detective. We had a pretty thorough process about a couple of weeks to a month ago. Deputy Chief Lucantoni did an excellent job bringing in a couple area lieutenants that run the detective division in their respective agencies. And we made it a point to bring these folks in from agencies that weren't too close to Wenham. So there was an objective review of our candidates without any interaction with knowing who the candidates are. We were lucky to have 4 incredible people go through the process. Super proud as the chief, and I know the deputy was very proud as well to have these 2 supervisors from these detective divisions say that they'd love to have any one of the 4 that went for the job. So that speaks well for the quality of our candidates. And I'm going to step aside and let the deputy speak a little bit as well. I know he is on.
Good evening, everyone.
hi.
I just want to reiterate what the chief said. It was a very extensive process. Each candidate went through extensive questioning on an oral board setting, as well as a written assignment that was timed, that they had to do in a certain amount of time, and they had to meet certain criteria. the feedback from both lieutenants who were on the board said every candidate did exceptionally well. They would be a detective in their communities, absolutely, without a doubt. So it made us very proud and how everyone did in the process. However, Detective, well, call him Detective now, but Chad Labrie did an exceptional job, and he's well deserving of his position. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Most of you may have seen me around town. I've been with Wenham since 2005. I'm very excited about this position. I have been just straight out since getting appointed detective, and I just look forward to working, hard and diligently for the town, and, just doing the best job that I can and being thorough. And my phone line's open if you need help with anything. So thank you, everyone. I'm super, super excited and proud for this appointment.
Well, congratulations, Detective Labrie. We know you pretty well, and happy to have you in this position, and have full faith in the process that was used to choose you for the position. So thank you to everyone who was involved. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that?
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, and Deputy Chief. Appreciate the time and effort that you put into this. All right, now we have to start calling you Detective Chad. Is that right?
You can, that's right.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that takes care of the police issues or agenda items. So
We still have
we still have
police
the big one.
reform bill, right?
Yes, how
right.
could I forget that one?
So
Okay.
just one more thing with this too. I did have a chance to talk a little bit about this with you before, and speaking with our legislative delegation, and the fact that nothing really has been geared up yet in terms of funding this on the legislative side. Again, it sounds as if they maybe set aside some small amount, but won't even be close to what it will require for us to cover. So again, I want to let the chief take this, but just note for everybody, this would be the first of probably many conversations we'll be having with this. We did share the memo with the Finance Committee. I'll be before them tomorrow night, talking some more about the potential implications of this on the FY23 budget and for this year's budget as well. So it's just, so I think the objective tonight is really not to necessarily solve any problems, but bring it to your attention and make sure the board is aware of this and that it is something that we are going to continue to need to work on. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Okay,
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah, Ryan, teed up a good foundation for where we're at. Everyone knows what's been going on with law enforcement for the last, year and a half or so. And there's been a lot of reforms. Massachusetts is no different than any other state in the country. Across the board, reforms have taken place in one form or another. And a lot of them have geared around more training. And Massachusetts responded, and the legislation responded and created some new requirements. And a lot of it was centered around, quotes, additional training. However, when it was originally sent the way of Mass Chiefs and kind of worked out and forwarded to us, the additional training wasn't really spelled out. It acknowledged the need for it, but it didn't get too deep into the weeds at that point. And they've, over the last few months, have fine-tuned it a little more, and not up until the last few weeks were they able to really, the MPTC and what essentially turned into the post commission, which is now overseeing the certification and decertification of all police officers in the state, kind of put together this additional training. And as Ryan mentioned, it is an unfunded mandate. The training in and of itself is not pay required. So Wenham Police Department or no other police department in the state has to pay for the training. However, we have to pay for the man hours required for the reserve officers to go through the training and all the other things that come along with that. So preliminarily, based on the discussion that Ryan and I had, I broke that down to the best of my ability based on our current structure and setup of the 16 reserve officer positions that we're currently slotted for. And I cross-referenced that with the requirements that were put in place, and to come up with a monetary value that we're going to be hit with, and there's no other way around it. And this additional training covers a few different areas, and it's overall it's 200 some odd hours, 200 hours. 120 of those hours are going to be online recorded instruction that each reserve officer is going to be required to go to. So those are man hours worked that are going to need to be paid. And then 40 of those hours, another 40, an additional 40 is going to be driver training. And then another additional 40 is going to be firearms. In order to complete the Bridge Academy, all of that training has to be done. How the state did it is they broke it down by alphabet. So it's over a 3-year tiered system relative to when your last name, I think it's A through F and then H through, I forget which letter it stops at. They did the best based on the 3,000 reserve cops in the state. They broke it down to the best of their ability to make it over a 3-year period. The requisite requirements, though, the preliminary requirements to be able to also complete this additional training is to have a needed 2,400 hours worked for each person going through this Bridge Academy. And that's over a 5-year period. And those hours can't be training, and they can't be what's commonly referred to as police details. It has to be patrol only. So those hours, along with all those training hours, are what basically break down to the preliminary minimal requirements. However, what happens in doing that relative to the average hourly rate based on the Wenham current wages that are in place, and when we break that down, you're also going to have examinations that are required to be proctored at the police department for when these examinations are taken to pass while going through the Bridge Academy. So that's going to incorporate a fee along with, prior to going into the academy, you're going to have a medical exam and a physical testing, which have their own financial breakdown. The ammunition is very, very high right now, and we're required to provide the ammunition as well for that 40 hours of training, along with the commute time for the officers going back and forth to Fort Devens, which is where that's going to be located. The wear and tear on the cruiser that we're also provided to, required to provide when the driver training takes place it's a substantial hit. It may not seem like much, but that emergency driver training over a 40-hour work week times the amount of officers that are doing it. We're going to go through several sets of tires, along also with the gas fee of going back and forth. And the preliminary breakdown per officer, and depending on other chiefs you talk to, we're all hovering around the same amount. It's anywhere between $10,000 and $11,000 per officer to get them up and running and bridged, if you will, to be fully compliant with the new standards that were put in place through this Bridge Academy committee that was set up through the Criminal Justice Training Council, along with a whole other set of mandates that we could talk for hours of other requirements that police departments are supposed to be put in. And then if you times that obviously over the different years, and then you come up with some pretty hefty numbers overall relative to, if we were to do 16 total officers, we're looking at about $176,000, give or take a little bit. And then depending on each year, how the officers break down relative to their last name, specifically in Wenham, we're looking at 22,000, 55,000, and then 44,000. Depending, and the numbers can change relative to who wants to go for it or who's eligible. And the problem that has to be looked at is not only where the money's coming from, but then also the return on the investment of if the town wants to make that financial investment for maybe a reserve officer that might work once or twice a month. And that's something that we have to look strongly at. The current reserve force that we have right now Super proud of them. They step it up constantly. We couldn't currently survive in our agency without our reserve officers, just based on the size of our agency, with the amount of full-timers that we currently have working, just with time off, sick time, vacations, training requirements, court requirements, the need for these reserve officers to constantly step up to do that coverage. It's a pretty big hit. And so certainly something that we're taking very seriously, and something that Ryan and I have had these, springboard discussions to take a heavy look at it now and decide how we want to channel our energy moving forward to kind of, as a team effort, wrap our brains around the best and most cost effective and most prudent way to handle it, so the PD and the town wins at the end.
Questions or preliminary
Yeah.
comments for the chief? I have a couple. I can kick off with a little. So, coming from a number of years on the school committee, the term unfunded mandate is something that I'm very familiar with, and is always very painful. As is often true with the legislature, the concept is good, but what we pass as legislation seems to oftentimes be the concept without necessarily, as you said, the nitty-gritty details of how it will be implemented. So I think all of the types of training that I've heard you talk about and I've read about in the packet are all worthwhile. I mean, it would be great for our reserve officers to have this level of training, but as you said, the rub comes with the money, which obviously is a lot of money, and I'm imagining in the future we're going to be looking at things like, well, the service that we provide is the most important thing, but how can we do that in a way that we can afford? And I can imagine there'll be some cost analyses and things like that. But I think Ryan said earlier in the meeting, and I agree with him, that I think there's going to need to be, people are going to gather together, like communities of our size, I think would be wise to gather together and to start some full court sort of lobbying of the legislature for at least some aid to help us get through this, these costs, which are, for a small town, who A, needs the reserve officers, but B, doesn't have the money, is a very difficult hurdle. So we appreciate the initial information. And as Ryan said, I'm sure it's the first of many. So Gary, Diane, anything?
Just a couple quick questions. So what would be the first entry date for one of our prospective candidates?
So first year, we have 2 offices this first year, just based on the alphabet, how it starts, and it kicks off in October, and it has to be complete for them by June 30th of this year for our first 2 officers that are eligible. So that would be, we would have to get the ball rolling, anytime after, I believe it's right at the beginning of October is when we can start registering officers for this Bridge Academy.
And the second, maybe a second iteration, have you polled the current force as to what their career desires are, who's going to stay? And also, you mentioned the 24 hours in 5 years. Do all 16 of ours currently meet that requirement?
No, in fact, a good amount do not right now, but they're going to have 5 years from now. So they could attend this Bridge Academy in, say, their first year guys, and they might not have the hours. They would then have the rest of the time period to complete those hours. And then what happens is it makes them what's called exemption eligible, which means graduation of the Bridge Academy with all those prerequisites we just talked about, along with those 2,400 hours completed, they can then apply for an exemption of the full-time academy, and a chief would have to, on their behalf, apply for that exemption to say, I would like Officer X to work in a full-time capacity based on his graduation from the Bridge Academy and the training and the hours that he's already worked. Because now the part-time academies are a thing of the past now. Once they get through these 3,000 reserve officers in the state, whomever wants to still do it, then once over that time period that I mentioned, once that's over and done with, they're going to have to, and they're already in the process, creating a new part-time academy and taking a further look at training. So yeah, a lot of them do not have the hours. And then if I were to guess that based on the amount of officers that we have now, there's a handful that are interested in still looking for a full-time police job. And the problem that exists though is we then, if the town of Wenham or the Wenham Police Department pays for an officer to get through this bridge academy and to complete these hours, they are then, any other municipality, if they desire, can apply for that waiver on that officer's behalf, and the officer can go to that department.
And vice versa, right? If,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, I think, great presentation. There's a lot more to be learned on this. And I think perhaps we might need a specialized board meeting later on, and certainly got to get the FinCom's input as well.
Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on that for a second, Diane, then if you have anything more to say, but I think, I guess a piggyback question is, after this training that people have gone through, do you think that those waivers will be easy to come by? I mean, is it reasonable to imagine if someone's gone through this training and had 2,400 hours that they would be likely?
The problem with this is you're still literally hundreds of hours less than what a full-time academy still provides. And so you have to, as a chief, be willing to weigh the two and be able to go with that. And there's a several 100-hour difference. There's no PT. So that means there's no physical training in this bridge academy.
Right.
There's no paramilitary structure that exists in most academies, which is very important because it shows with emergency services and with the kind of things that all my men and women are exposed to on a regular basis, that this paramilitary structure sets up the ability to assess an officer's wherewithal to handle a stressful situation. And if they can't make it through a police academy because of this structure and setup, that's a pretty good indicator that if, God forbid, and it happens every day, they risk their life every day, that they could be exposed to something that is super scary and super dangerous that otherwise in a full structured academy would identify that. Do I think that can happen? Of course it can. Do I think I have good officers? I do, but there's a marked difference between the training, without a doubt.
Well, I think we're going to be relying on our police force and other staff's extensive experience to come up with some creative, I don't know, solutions is not really the right word, but processes or structures that we can use. But Diane, I didn't want to forget you. Is there anything you wanted to add?
You're muted,
you're
Diane.
muted.
Mute. Sorry for that delay. I just wanted to thank the chief for the presentation and the information. And I know it's going to be a difficult situation, but we'll have to walk through it, talk through it, just like all the other municipalities. I'm sure you'll figure out something. No doubt.
Much choice. Okay, anything else for our officer here? Thanks for that presentation. It was a good introduction and a lot of work to even just think about it or figure it out to this point on the police force. So we know there'll be more work to be done. Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is one that we had the beginning of a presentation, and I will apologize up front for kind of a long gap before we were now finally able to have a presentation. There's no action required here, but there is someone here to make a presentation to us about Indigenous land acknowledgement. And
Right, so hello, I would,
Martha has some say.
yes, I'm joined tonight by Eleanor Everett, who is a 2021 graduate of the regional high school and a current honors freshman at UMass, who is taking
Yay.
tonight to zoom into this town meeting, which I think shows their incredible perseverance in this project that they have been working on for more than a year. Jackie, were you including the slide deck, or were you going to do a screen share so that we could show the slides?
Excuse me, could I just ask you to introduce yourself?
I'm sorry, my name's Martha Brennan, and I'm the
Thank you.
chair of the Human Rights Committee. We actually reviewed this back in March and unanimously supported its adoption by the Board of Selectmen. It has been a troubled and not a troubled, a long road for Eleanor, and it has been approved. Well, I'm gonna turn it over to them for the presentation, and I'm hoping that you guys have some questions and that we can talk through how this might unfold in Wenham, because a lot of work has gone into it. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Eleanor.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, so I'm Eleanor, or Everett. You can call me my first name or my last name. And I'm presenting about the land acknowledgement proposal. It was developed last year by the club, and I'm kind of returning via Zoom so that I can hopefully see this through. And yeah, and I want to begin with a land acknowledgement to give an example of how you would do it and what it is. We all live on Indigenous land. We would like to begin by acknowledging the Massachusetts tribe, the tribe of Indigenous peoples from whom the colony, province, and Commonwealth of Massachusetts have taken their name. We would like to pay our respect to the ancestral bloodline of the Massachusetts tribe and their descendants who still inhabit historical Massachusetts tribe territories to this day. And we got that from Tom Screen, who's the vice president of the tribe. And so that is a land acknowledgement, but to actually answer it like what it is, a more formal definition is that these are simple and powerful ways of showing respect to the original inhabitants of land where we are standing, presenting, engaging in any activity really. And the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness believes this is a meaningful step towards honoring the truth, making the invisible visible, and correcting the American stories that embrace Indigenous peoples' tribal history and culture. So basically it's reading a statement before events that reminds people of the history of the land and the full history, not just, the past few hundred years. And I like that quote because it gets into the first reason that I have listed for why it's important, which is that it's so easy to forget that that is the history of the place that we're on. People it's so often feels like, history started in the 1600s in this continent, but like that's not true. And also the Massachusetts tribe, for example, are still here. They're still present. And that shouldn't be forgotten. And it's also a tragedy that shouldn't be erased. It's not just a neutral thing that was in the past, like culture, family, languages, all these things were destroyed. So many people lost their lives, and there was a lot of suffering involved with the colonization of the United States. And that is important to remember so we don't repeat it. This reflection can also inspire action, both in yourself and in others. If you are the person reading the statement, every time you read it, it can be a moment to reflect on how you relate to the land. And it can also just tell people that, they didn't know that the Massachusetts tribe existed, or they didn't know that these kinds of statements even existed. And also, Masconomet is buried in Wenham, so it's a direct connection to local history. These are a few examples of places that have adopted it just within our home state. It's very common in places like Canada or Australia or New Zealand, but just within our own state, there's a few municipalities that have adopted this. There's schools, including the Hamilton Wenham School District and UMass Amherst. So the requests of the club are physical markers on the school campuses and town halls, and plaques at Cranberry and Patton Park, because those parks are places where people tend to think about the land and interact with it the most. And we also want, I think this is an old presentation, specifically the town website. I know you can't change the school district website, but yeah, statements on the town website, and then also reading the acknowledgement before major events, kind of like how I did. You know, if I were starting the events, I would be like, hey, everybody, thanks for coming. Before we get further, and then you would read the statement, and then you kind of continue on with things. So that also includes virtual events, by the way, because most people are Zooming in from Wenham or Hamilton, and the funding would be provided by the club.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Are there comments or questions for Eleanor at this point?
I'd like to just say that the funding is provided by the Hamilton Wenham Social Justice Club when we say the club. So there's no cost to the town
Yes.
for doing this. I think they got a grant from the Cultural Council or
We would fundraise it.
fundraise.
We've made a few plans about that.
Well,
So
it's certainly,
go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry. I was going to say it's certainly timely and important topic, and maybe particularly just in where we live. You're right, we feel like, you know, our history started because we are so old, you know, we were here when the country started. We just assume that that's as old as our country is. Like many of these things, it's going to take some conversation and you know, sort of understanding of the best way to honor this acknowledgement in a Wenham way, in Wenham, I should say. But I very much appreciate all the work that's done. I assume that this club is still going on at the high school, even though Eleanor has moved on to college. And I thank you very much for, you know, taking your time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedule of studying to Zoom in to join us for this meeting. And we will be continuing the conversation for sure, but I think you've given us a good, really good basis for having those discussions.
Right.
Anything else?
Would it be possible for, you know, as someone who's new to watching select board meetings, how does the process work? Like, how would we follow up or provide additional information, or I don't know, you know, we put some asks out there from the slide deck. It doesn't mean that you'd have to accept all of them, but like, how does it go forward, I guess is my question.
So I guess, we've had a little bit of this conversation before. I guess at first, as a sort of board of directors, we try to gain as much knowledge as we can. It's taken a couple of meetings, several months apart, to gain knowledge. I think then if we take a little time to make sure that we understand this and reach out to whoever might have answers if we have some questions. And then I think there's a bit of thinking and deliberating and judging, getting some community input, which I would be very interested in. Anyone has any suggestions of how to get this community input. And as all of these things, unfortunately, they don't happen quickly. So we will take this up for deliberation at another meeting. I think many of the things that have been brought forward are all important by the Human Rights Committee. I think we haven't had a chance, and Martha, you and I have talked about this, to talk about them in a holistic way, how they all fit together, how we're going to address this to be honorable and respectful and, inclusive. So please, Ryan, I'll ask him to put this on the list of things to be followed up. We have a lot of them, but it's on a list. We're not going to just listen to the presentation and never talk about it again. I don't know, because we're not deciding tonight. I don't know how it will show up again, but we certainly will have a conversation.
Okay, so following on that, and I'm going to be a nudge about it just because I want to understand the process. So could the Human Rights Committee be involved in trying to solicit that public comment that you want? Like, is there another step? Because we did vote on it, and then I did provide a sort of memo with the presentation that outlined which of our charges that we were charged by the select board to address that this land acknowledgement fit into. So I just want to make sure that going forward, when we bring things to you that, Catherine, you and I talked about this. I don't want it to feel like a black hole. We vote on something and we push it forward, and then we don't see what happens, or we're not involved in getting you the information that you need. So I'd like it to kind of be a collaborative process, so that it doesn't just show up on an agenda and I didn't know it was going to be there and I found out the week before. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be like something that we work on jointly. If that,
yeah, and that's one of the things that I when we've talked earlier, I don't think we've quite got down yet. Your committee's charge is pretty clear to sort of understand and bring forward issues of human rights that are important to Wenham, and suggest actions that we might take in Wenham. Then it becomes our responsibility to make the decision about how to best implement, if and how to implement any of those actions. They're not, to be perfectly blunt, not all of them are mandates, but they certainly are all taken seriously. And yes, we probably would like your help with public input, and I think that wouldn't come in a free form of, hey, go get some public input. I think this board might sit down and talk about, well, who, how, what? Is it a survey? Is it how would we get it? And certainly your committee would be a good resource to help us, get that information.
Yeah. As an example, I would point to what Chief DiNapoli and Chief Stevens did with the Human Rights Coalition, where they had a forum on the meanings of the flags, meaning the blue line flag and other things. Like the Human Rights Committee could sponsor a forum that brings in some speakers about Indigenous land acknowledgement and invite the community. If that was something that you feel like it would get you the information. I know that this is a not very well attended meeting, so it's hard to see that the public in general would have been able to benefit from Eleanor's presentation.
I think you hit on something very important. And again, this is something I think I've said before. I think the most useful, helpful, important thing that your committee can do is to educate people in Wenham about issues like this. That I'm sure there are people who don't know much about it. And so to that point, not only do you serve that goal by having sort of a forum, and I thought the flag forum was very good as well, but from having a forum, so you get public input as well as reaching out and educating people. So we're not just, flying a flag or making a statement. We've really gone beyond that, and folks in Wenham will be more informed and we'll have a richer community for that. I don't know if the board agrees with me on the idea of a forum. Again, I'm not sure we want to decide that tonight, but I throw that out as I think, my own personal opinion, education is probably one of the most important things that you can do. And as you can see here, you know, of course, there are hopefully many more people watching or will be watching, but it's not the broadest audience. And this
Right.
issue deserves a broader audience. So Gary and Diane, am I pretty much on track there? Yeah, Diane, did you want to say something?
I did. A couple things that came to mind. So the Human Rights Committee is charged with researching this kind of information and sharing it with the community. So what I gather is this amazing presentation that we just had. You're explaining to us what you've learned and what you would like to see. It sounds as if it's almost like when we became a no place for hate, that type of acknowledgement is what we're looking for. So before I think the board could take any action on that, we would like to see that the community understand what's going on. So it's not just, as Catherine said, a statement. So I think it's so far been a great process, and that your committee's done a great job. You presented to us. We haven't heard from Gary, but we will, in a very positive fashion. Now we just need to make sure we explain and teach to the community, make sure everybody is on the same foot, and then maybe we can come back and make that acknowledgement and be an Indigenous land acknowledgement edition, the plaques and the statements and stuff. That's how I see it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's how I was understanding it.
Gary, do you want to add anything to this at this point?
I just agree at this point that certainly the educational aspect, I think, has the most payback as far as getting the citizenry as a whole understanding the issue. So a forum perhaps, or it's always hard to get literature out to the entire crowd, but we need to find some method to broaden the education of people on this subject. So maybe manpower wise, as for resources, we can rely on the Human Rights Committee, but I think we need to put this on a near-term agenda to see where we go forward.
Okay,
So I guess
that's
sounding like,
helpful.
okay.
I just want to say that Diane's analogy to the no place for hate type of statement is helpful in terms of how we might go forward in rallying different constituencies that would support this. So I'll definitely follow up with that and follow up with our committee, but I want to do a special shout out for Eleanor for coming in from freshman year and not letting this
Definitely.
Issue drop.
That's great. That's
Yes,
great.
thank you for your perseverance as well as your attendance, Eleanor. All right, anything else on that? Okay, we'll be talking, I'm sure, Martha. Thank you
Yep.
so much, both of you,
Thanks.
for being here, taking your time out tonight.
Madam Chair, you mind if I take this one? I think we were,
Sure.
this was the town was waiting for some other information from town council. So there were some questions that you had submitted to town council on this topic. We were hoping we would get some information back on that. We did receive something, but it came in quite late this afternoon. So I'd like to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to take a pass on this and hopefully bring this back as a topic for our October 5th meeting.
That's fine. We anticipated sometimes when we need things from council that we're not sure when we get them. So
I'm gonna jump in. Doesn't this
Yes.
vote need to happen? I think that they need us to extend. I mean,
well,
yeah, I just,
my understanding is, yes, they may need an extension, but in the near term, I mean, they want the extension, obviously, but they're trying to not need it. My understanding is that in the near term, there's been the Maple Woods, the Harbor Light Community Partners, has applied for some funding in a round of state funding and did not receive it, but they have already put in a preliminary application for forgotten what it's called, a mini round of funding that they seem quite optimistic about. So nothing that it's important, and we just need to completely understand it. It certainly has ramifications for the towns, but I don't think another 2 weeks is going to change anything that Hamilton Community Partners will do relative to getting funding. At the moment, all of the funding that they've requested and that has been granted to them is still in effect, I believe. And as a matter of fact, I've asked for a timeline, sort of deadline dates and what they would be if they're extended. So I'm hoping that in the short term, Margaret Hoffman said she'd help out with that. So my understanding is, if someone knows something different, please let me know. But my understanding is that obviously this will help, because if they don't get the funding in this round, then it goes to another round. But at this moment in time, I don't think that we're holding anything up on this project. The money that's been, the $1 million that's been committed is still there, and not about to expire. So that's my
Okay, I
understanding.
thought it was a little bit more imminent that we needed to take a vote, but we're waiting for information from council, town council, is that correct?
Yeah, just on a process question. So if it's here, it's great, because usually, at least for me, when we get the information from town council, I generally have the answer inspires me to have 3 more questions. So it gives me, at least me, a couple of days to to have follow-ups. So we'll just keep putting this on agendas.
Okay.
Anything else on that?
So just a
Okay.
quick question.
Oh,
if I
sure,
could,
Gary.
Catherine.
I'm
So,
sorry.
and I guess it's directed more towards Ryan. So the information from town council gonna be forwarded to the 3 of us tomorrow or sometime?
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the plan, right? It just came in too late for us to.
Right.
I mean, the idea of this is to be able to give it to you in a timely enough way for you to consider. As Catherine said, oftentimes responses provided from council spur other questions, but where it came in as late as it did, and only at my strong urging for them to get that to us, even though I had already given them a deadline. It just seems premature to
Right.
bring it up for this evening.
So, yeah, because I mean, this project is very important to the town, especially with the 40B implications. So let's double check on the actual deadlines, that we don't want anything to slip through the crack as far as 40B or the funding. So maybe before 5 October, we would have that information to the board, and then we can make the decision at the next meeting. That'd be my input.
Okay. Noted.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So the
The
policies.
next,
This is gonna
policies, take it
be
away.
Mainly Jackie, I think, was going to take it from here. Jackie, I don't know if you need to take the screen or do anything from here in terms
Yeah,
of.
do you mind if I screen share,
No,
Ryan? All right, let me pull up what I've got. So to get started, the first item in your packet on this tonight, let me make that bigger so you can see better. One moment.
Bright colors.
I love
Can see
bright
them.
colors.
I can see the colors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So just to give some context, a vast majority of our HR policy book, our employee handbook, was approved in 2001. So we are reaching the 20th anniversary of this handbook, which is really not great. So I've been working, we've been attempting to update as many policies as we can over the last few years. And as part of my transition plan, I am doing one final push to get more of these policies updated so that I can leave them to Ryan to interpret and employ, but we can have a more fulfilled policy book to start the next labor negotiations with as well. So the green highlighted policies, we've already done a first reading on this year, and the yellow highlighted policies I'm going to speak to tonight. Some of these are very pro forma updates that you're not going to be shocked by. Some of these have a little more nuance to them. They are all based in current labor law and best practice for municipalities. So it's really just bringing us, fully into the 21st century as we are in the 21st year of it. So catching up. So couple of quick highlights. Oh, and let me also say that the goal of this tonight is to get your feedback and to send a full list of new policies to council. And we've scheduled the October 5th meeting of the select board, your regular meeting. Will also incorporate a public hearing as per our town bylaws. We have to have a public hearing on personnel policies. So the goal being is that we'll have one public hearing for all of the policies that we've had first readings of this season. So we can have a little cost savings there with the public hearing and have one public hearing for any input. And then from there, approve and codify the new policy, the new handbook. The last kind of contextual piece of information I will give you is that the new table of contents that I've used with the green and yellow highlighting, some of the policies in it may look different than the order on the website. That's because as part of this update, I've also recodified the handbook so that all the supplemental policies that have been added from 2010 to 2020 are now in their appropriate chapter, so that when you're a new town administrator, new finance director, new department head, all of the policies are codified in the table of contents and in one place and easier for people to reference moving forward. So that's just to start some context. So as you can see, a lot of yellow tonight, but we're gonna, I think, go through a lot of them with a good amount of pace. So let me just grab my other screen share, excuse me.
While she's grabbing that, we continue to look at dates. I know that some our members have some times that they're not going to be here. We'll certainly evaluate everyone's ability to make it certainly to this public hearing. So we're going to balance that. It seems important to me that the board all be there. So if we have to be flexible,
And certainly, we'd certainly like to get this done before Jackie departs too.
well,
So
there's
the
that.
fifth,
Yeah.
so we want
There's
the
that.
expert in place
So
for that
It's-
public
And
hearing.
I think the other thing too is I've already submitted the public hearing notice to the Salem News because I had not heard that October 5th wasn't happening. So if that's news,
Okay.
then I am hopeful that we can find out what the new date is so I can rectify that public hearing notice soon.
well, we'll get back to you on that. I just heard today that I wasn't sure about the dates of one of our members. So
Okay.
we'll make sure we do it before you leave, Jackie.
Super. So the first policy tonight is the sick leave bank for union employees. So currently, a few meetings ago, we did the non-union policy. This is the same policy, but for unions. Currently, the police and the library have sick leave bank in their contracts. This codifies that into one policy for the processing side for our treasurer collector office that manages it on their side. And it serves for the library at this time. The library has adopted the same policy in their contract that our non-union employees have because they had previously been non-union employees up until last year. So this is just codifying this for the library employees and for the future so that union employees that want to participate in the sick leave bank have the same structure as our non-union employees. So this is the exact same policy that you've seen before, just for the union, particularly the library at this time. Should
Anybody
I?
have any? Well, let's just do them one at a
Yeah.
time. I think this one,
That's good.
anybody have any feedback or comments for Jackie to take for the next reading or on this one? Gary, anything?
Looks good. And is, read the non-union, read this one. They're both-
Yeah, right. Diane,
Same.
me too. It looks great. We can
Super.
move on.
Super. Okay, this next one is a social media policy. So currently we do have an electronics usage, technology usage policy for our employees for when they're utilizing town computers or like what you're doing on town computers. This focuses instead on the town's actual social media accounts. We have at this time in terms of social networking, the town has an official Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Town of Wenham MA. For those of you not following us, if you're not following
Is it-
us, you're missing out. And this goes through, so I'm just gonna pull up the table of contents so you can see the policy areas that it works with. It has an intent and purpose. It has definitions, policy. It's a one-way communication policy. Ryan actually brought this policy to my attention from Boxborough. So this is something he helped craft there. It is very reflective of how we already do business, because we do not engage with comments on our Facebook unless it's something like very factual, like you forgot the time on this event, we will post the time. But we don't engage in commentary back and forth, things like that. So this reflects what we've been doing. It's just not been codified. The policy for creating accounts, adherence to laws, reasons for deleting content, the affiliation with the town, what the posting procedures are like, endorsements, which we would not do, legal and other content restrictions, interacting with the public, the photography and digital recording policy, and unaffiliated accounts. So I don't know if anyone has a question about a particular section, if that's the easiest way to do this.
Questions?
I was just gonna go, do you have the list by packet page? Jackie, can you go down to packet page 58?
Is it what page of the
It's-
social
it's-
media policy, Gary?
So it's as a procedure, chapter 4, procedure B,
Chapter.
or point wasn't not labeled for.
I have
Yeah.
page 4.
All right, maybe I got the reference wrong here. All right, let's just skip on because it was more of a from, you know,
Do you want to
typo,
talk offline,
administrative.
Gary?
Yeah, I'll just send it to you on the side. It's better.
Okay, great.
I just
Any-
add, this is, one of the reasons to have this is that while we do have sort of a computer use policy, that this is specific to how we, how we use social media, and really focuses more on the fact that we use it as a way to promote the town, to share information, put out information, but that in an area with, or in complexities of debating online and what have you, it's really intended to emphasize the one-way nature of the communication. So it's really to protect the town, just that we aren't engaging in regular dialogue with or debate with the public, but rather just making them aware of certain events, activities, et cetera, that they need to be made aware of.
My only comment, I guess, although it's obviously very comprehensive, is it's probably the longest policy that we have. That said, I don't really have any particular concerns with it. It is very comprehensive. I have one question that I'll take offline for the second reading, and I think the most important point is it does codify what even people who post, how they should act. People are, our own staff. So it gives a policy and for our own staff as well as for people who read it. And anyway, I think it's fine. I just have one small thing that I'll take offline.
So now we're getting into my favorite section of these policies, which is where I have brought a bunch of smaller pro forma changes together into one section. And I can't wait to share them with you all, but we're gonna, I think, breeze right through them. So this is just a brief correction, and I did include a summary of changes on all these small pro forma ones. So this was a 2001 policy on our health and medical insurance. This now reflects our current offerings and is now generic enough that should, the health insurance market significantly change in terms of what municipalities are offering, we're still covered in what we offer. And it, still directs folks to the treasurer collector's office for the complete description of the plans, as all municipalities do. Anything on health and medical?
I'm all set.
Okay.
Good.
And then moving through, so This year, Juneteenth became an official holiday, so that has been added to our official holidays list. We also recently, in the last few years in Wenham, codified the day after Thanksgiving in a supplemental policy. So I'm just bringing that into this section so it's clear for the future, and have indicated that our celebration in October is now Indigenous Peoples as well as Columbus Day, trying to better articulate that, as that is currently something that many municipalities are doing to, with land acknowledgement tonight as one of the topics ahead of me. I am not going to try to speak better than how it was already spoken to, but this is a small way that we can be putting that to work. So
Quick question, Jackie, is that how it's written in the town bylaws currently?
the holidays.
Yeah, the Indigenous / Columbus.
So this is what we're talking about tonight is the personnel policies
Right.
for employees. If it
So
I,
this
if
is
it
the only
is,
place where the actual days are listed out?
I will check. You bring up a good
Right.
point. I will check the bylaws. But that's
Interesting.
something that I know, like we have, Margaret and I have a couple of things that are like codification like from last year that
Right.
need to get redone in the bylaws. So I will make a note to check that, Gary. I appreciate
Right.
that. That's a good point. Anything
One,
else? Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Jen.
just not, this is not really a clarification, but for folks, other folks that are not here maybe, Juneteenth has not only been determined to be a state holiday, but also a federal holiday. So that both of those things make it sort of automatically, as a municipality in Massachusetts, it becomes a holiday for us. So in case anyone was wondering. So other than that, looks fine. It's nice to actually have a complete list.
Next up, recruitment and selection. So our favorite change, select board from Board of Selectmen. But more importantly, this codifies our current process. You can very much tell in the way this procedure for posting positions and for recruiting positions was from 2001. This brings it into the 21st century and is reflective of our current process with getting in contact with the town administrator's office. We've also added this, which is double texted, and I will fix that, but this is new. The primary posting location will be the Town of Wenham website. Just as a clarification, the same with meeting calendar notices. We don't really use our bulletin board anymore, as we want to make sure that, but we do want to have all of our postings posted in one place on the website for consistency. So this just goes over that. I don't know if there are any questions about this.
Gary,
Go
you
up
look like
just
you
a
have a
bit,
question.
Jackie, can you?
Say when.
Yeah, right there. So under 2 there, to the appropriate department head or chairperson of the board. So that would be as in the case of what, the Cemetery Commission, Water Commission, and the assessors, that as they employ people separately, they would be informed.
Yes, so the TA or their designee still receives all the and screens all the applicants. And then, for example, the Board of Health is the appointing authority for the health agents and the public health
Right.
nurses. So, but it still funnels it through the TA to ensure that labor laws and hiring practices are
Right.
being met. Because I think it's an unfair expectation on our board and committee members to, they need to follow all of those laws, but it's an unfair expectation to put that completely on their shoulders. I think the TA is the hub for all of the HR work that we do to ensure that it's compliant, because it falls back on the town as an employer, regardless if it's a board or a committee or a department. So it's just important, I think, that we're acknowledging that, which this policy did then, but we added or their designee because sometimes it just makes sense for other departments to weigh in and help the TA when this comes down to it. TA is one person, so. That's that one.
So I get the concept, but I'm a little confused. This seems to be a hybrid of hiring policy for employees, but then when it talks about all positions covered by the appointing authority of the select board, it seems to it could be interpreted to be talking about literally boards and committees. So it all makes sense to me, other than the first application. So board chairs are, I don't, other than the assessors and maybe other than the assessors, I don't think any of our boards have hiring authority. So that's just a I think that just maybe can be clarified. This is really meant to be mostly employees.
Yeah, I think
right?
it says board chairs there because typically the Board of Assessors, the Water Commission, the Board of Health, and one more, and Gary just said it and I'm blanking.
Cemetery?
Thanks.
Cemetery.
Cemetery are the appointing authority. So that's where it's the board chair versus the department head. I think the policy, this is all for employment recruitment though, versus select board appointments
Right.
of positions. So I
Right.
think that's an easy clarification to
Yeah.
make.
I think
So-
that was what got me there. It didn't sound like select board
Well, and Catherine,
authority.
it does, right here, it says this policy applies to all full-time and part-time, regular part-time employees. So it takes the
Right.
appointed officials out of it.
Right. So the second that this policy shall apply to all positions covered by the appointing authority of the select board is a little, I think, misleading, and
Yeah.
maybe because we don't, but it also might be useful to give those examples that you talked about, cemetery, board of assessors, because that makes it very clear.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have no no issue at all.
Okay, we'll make those changes and send them back out. And this will also, revisions from tonight will get incorporated onto our website so that it's available to the public ahead of the public hearing notice. I just skipped over one. Here we go. Classification and salary. So there's a lot of new yellow in this section. The first thing is that we are no longer referencing the 1996 pay and classification study. And this is written with the objective that it makes compensation and classification, it pulls in the 18-hour plus positions, so when this policy was written, most of our regular part-time roles were either like regular stipended people or 20 plus hours. We do have a couple of regular part-time positions that are 18 plus, such as the executive secretary to the assessors, the planning coordinator, the conservation coordinator. It's good to incorporate those positions into the compensation and classification as some of our main clerical and even in some cases department head level positions for those departments. So they get incorporated whenever we do our non-union schedule. This also just will say that the review of the schedule is most recently adopted by the select board instead of tying us in the personnel policies that require a public hearing to update, tying us to an old comp and class study. It also puts in this best practice of hoping that the schedule is reviewed every 3 to 5 years through the use of a compensation and classification study to ensure accuracy and relevancy. And it just basically creates a mechanism to keep updating the comp and class study once we do this new study. So the RFP is going out soon. We'll have a new study, but this is creating that mechanism that we're updating the hiring ranges with the COLAs every year. And it's putting into policy that we're going to attempt to every 3 to 5 years do another study to keep up with the market. So it's just trying to make sure that that document stays relevant. Sorry, that's the only word I've got left tonight.
It's a good word.
Ryan, I don't know if you want to speak to this one at all about creating this mechanism for going forward once we do the comp and class. Did you have anything?
No, I think it's a good thing to codify the fact that we're, committing to coming back and looking at salaries on a regular basis. We need to stay competitive as a community and, vis-a-vis our peers. So it's a best practice. I think it's a good idea for us to be regularly looking at that.
Comments, questions? Gary, Diane?
Looks good.
Looks good to me.
So direct deposit, change to an employee's direct deposit arrangements must be done at the treasurer collector's office in person with at least one form of identification. Just a security measure that they have to come and present their identification when they want to make this change so that no one can make it on their behalf.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Travel and transportation and travel expense. So this is chapter 5.6 in our current handbook, and then a supplemental chapter, which will now be 5.6.1 or 2 in the new book. We had codified 2 old IRS rates in 1999 and in 2015. So this just codifies that the current IRS rate based on the start date of the travel is the rate for reimbursement. The IRS rate does change. Sometimes it's gone up. I think it's gone down sometimes too. But this just takes the interpretive headache out of it moving forward. So we'll stay current.
Only thing I
though
would say, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, but though I would not want to charge anyone the 1999 rate at this point.
That was going to be my point. Some of these are way out of date, but I think that our practice has been up to date. We just haven't, our policies have not kept up with our practice. So it's great that we're finally going to have policies that reflect what we're actually doing and are current. So that's all I have on that one.
And then finishing up, the personnel evaluation policy was last updated in 2001. This just allows for June 1st of each year, which now matches the collective bargaining agreement for the library. And it also matches the cycle with which we've been doing personnel evaluation since 2016 or 17. So we're just switching these to the fiscal calendar from the traditional calendar. And we're codifying this other piece too, which is that employees within their probationary period are ineligible for merit pay for a new fiscal year if the town is offering any merit pay based on that given fiscal year. It doesn't mean that merit pay is tied to evaluations. It's just in that the circumstance that evaluations are, if you're still in your probationary period, you're not going, if you've been an employee for 6 weeks as of June 1, it doesn't make sense to do a personnel evaluation. And if the town's doing merit and it's based on the personnel evaluations, it just doesn't make sense to do that. And then right now at this point, the personnel evaluation form is updated. We've updated it a couple of times, made some small tweaks based on using it. So we have our personnel evaluation form. The TA sends it out every year with all the process. But good to have that document have a little bit of flexibility as practices change. We don't want to over codify things and then get stuck either, because I think that was the trouble with a lot of these 2001 policies, is that they were good policies, but they didn't give us any leverage for moving forward within the policy without having to do a complete update every time. So Ryan, did you want to add any on this one? I don't know if I think I covered a lot of it.
I think I'm good on that.
Okay.
Questions, Diane, Gary?
Great work, Jackie, as always. It's
Looks
a lot
great.
of grinded out work. Yes.
So I do have a couple of questions, if I may. Does every employee have a probationary period?
For the policies, the personnel policies, yes.
Yes.
I think all employees have 3 months, but some of the collective bargaining units have up to a 6-month probationary period, depending on their contract.
My other question is how this policy connects to or interacts with our merit pay policy,
I think
or is it meant to?
It's not meant to. It's kind of meant to give us leverage to have that conversation, because I think we've been at a point where we're going to have a new compensation and classification schedule through the study. And one of the items in the RFP is that they're going to potentially make recommendations if there's a way we can be doing merit pay, personal evaluations, everything that follows a comp and class study better. So they're going to review our current form. They're going to review our current practices. So the goal is that out of comp and class, you will have recommendations based on the schedule, the positions, potentially hiring ranges, as well as these things that sort of trickle out from that. And I didn't want to tie you to anything without knowing the results of that survey. So this is trying to codify something without overly codifying it so that you can move forward and maybe revisit this in 6 months after the comp and class has been completed and presented to the board, and you've thought about it and you've digested it and you've maybe taken some action on the numbers and the quantitative side of it, but now Ryan will maybe have some recommendations for you about how to take those qualitative elements and put them into effect. So I think we're trying to get rid of some old policy language, but also give us some flexibility to fine tune our current practice based on this upcoming study that the consultant will be doing. And I'm sorry, that's a longer answer than I wanted it to be.
Well, I guess I hear what you're saying, but there's been a lot of confusion over the past few years relative to what is merit pay, who gets merit pay, how is it determined, and so this is sort of a future, short-term future issue. So by evaluating folks by June 1st, but then suggesting merit pay be included for those people who are eligible, but that we want to know all of that by the end of the fiscal year so we know how to, pay people their merit pay. That's why I asked if it's connected, because I think this is reasonably clear. But when you talk about merit pay here, it kind of makes you think about the merit pay policy, which I think is not particularly clear. So I'm not sure there's anything I suggest changing here, but I would definitely like, ideally, before we have to go through it again, to understand that merit pay and think about, I don't know why, I guess evaluations to be completed by June 1st makes sense, but it doesn't give very much time between all the evaluations being done and the implementation of merit pay. So I'm sorry, my questions or comments are more about merit pay, but it's kind of tied to the evaluation.
So I can answer part one of that, I think, tonight. And then I think, so Ryan and I did talk about this last week quite a bit to make sure that we fully knew what we wanted it to be. And I think based on past practice, it is helpful. June 1st is the very end of when an evaluation needs to be done, so that during the month of June, when we're doing personnel action forms for the following fiscal year for the July 1 payroll, finance has the personnel evaluation. So we're filing the personnel evaluations and the personnel action forms during the month of June. All of that work is being done to prepare us for the next fiscal year. I think the conversation that you brought up, Catherine, that's maybe it needs to happen soon, but it's not as urgent, but by next spring. And that, I think, circles back to the comp and class study and having them review our evaluation instrument, having them review our structure. We implemented that merit pay program when we did the comp and class study. So the comp and class study from 2015 had data from 2014 and 2015. The board reviewed it in 2016 and adopted some parts of it. And then the full adoption of the recommendations came in 2017. So we were already 3 years out from when the data was already getting old. So we're trying to rectify that with the time frame for the classification study in this personnel bylaw, that like every 3 to 5 years we're committing to comp and class.
Right.
The goal of the comp and class this time around, which I think it's a better drafted procurement document, meaning we're going to get a better consultant product, will include recommendations of here's what we have for personnel evaluation instrument, merit pay program. How does that hit our employees? How does that function? Is this the right way for us to be determining merit? And get a recommendation from that third party consultant who's professionally doing this with municipalities all the time, so that the board and Ryan has that tool going forward and can and I think hopefully correct the issues that we have seen with the evaluation process and the timing and the instrument.
Right.
So I think we had a lot of good intentions, and this is hopefully going to help us correct things that we've seen since the implementation occurred.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Anything else on this one?
Not for me.
And then last but not least, we have a policy right now that allows for new employees to get health insurance, because we were formerly in the GIC And there was a 2 to 3 month waiting period for employees when they became an employee of the town due to the practices of the GIC. Since this policy, it was important we had it when we did, but we are now out of the GIC. I met with Janet last week, and our assistant treasurer collector, payroll and benefits coordinator. Very unlikely that we would re-enter the GIC at this point. If we did, it would be a significant event, and we would have time to resurrect this policy as part of that process. So at this time, I'm asking the board to review revoking this policy just so we can clean up our books, because it's pretty unlikely we would rejoin the GIC as a health insurance provider, particularly given the cost savings and the service that we get from Maya. I think we've been pretty happy since that transition, and there's been some good cost savings. Even, during the pandemic, they've really put municipalities first, as they do, because they are the municipal interlocal insurance agency. So this would just clean us up and get this off the books.
Comments, questions?
Not here.
I'm all set.
Okay, and then actually last, and you can tell me to not do this if you would like.
That's the best laugh we've
The
gotten out
next
of
to
Gary
next to
tonight.
last. Right?
The next to last. I did submit an audit of the select board policies to date and where we are with them. I think there was a couple on here I was intending for October 5th. I may leave them to Ryan for you post October 5th, because that seems like it's going to be pretty busy. But this was included in your packet for you to review, because I know the board had asked for an audit on where we are on all of this. So that is the audit.
I would also add to that too, the board talked about doing maybe a little bit of a follow-up to our workshop. Some of these items may fit in with that. So in terms of items that you'd want to review and update. So something to think about for the board.
Right. It looks like all of them though, but Gary would be the expert. Did Jackie miss any that you can think of?
No,
Gary?
that looks like a good list. We're working on it.
Okay,
Or I
well,
should
thank
say
you for
Jackie
putting.
is really working on it.
We're
Well,
getting there.
It's great that we have a list, because at least we can refer back to what we've done and not done. So yeah, we will continue to work on it. Okay, I think we're now into our, what do we have next? Did I print the amended agenda?
I think we're all done.
Mhm. We're up to.
Good try. Very good try, Diane.
I think we're
Oh.
up.
The
Yeah,
slides
we're up
look
to
like
the
we
annual
are.
town meeting discussion.
Yeah, I thought that there was
Sorry.
a couple of things that got added. So if I can just, I don't think we'll decide anything tonight, but I brought this up at our workshop, and if I can just flush it out, and I'd be interested to hear folks' opinions. So it was actually recommended to me or suggested to me that we should take a look at, for this year, the town meeting and the date, which I guess if you want to say historically was in April for a few years. Well, historically was in May. For a few years it was in April, and the last couple of years have just been whenever we could get a tent kind of thing. Our bylaw does allow for us to look at this date every year and change it by some date in December 31st, which I think is way too late, to suit the public convenience. So a couple of things I just would ask that we consider, and perhaps get some input from other boards and committees that would be affected by this. I know that I don't think I've officially received it, but I know that there's a calendar, a budget preparation calendar going around. And so one of the reasons that I would
Catherine,
like to,
if I could just, I think that's part of the difficulty, is that whatever you saw was a draft, but we have to determine what the date of town meeting is. because
Right.
That's sort of everything else gets backed into that. So there's really,
right,
whatever
Which is-
calendars out there is really waiting on guidance from this board to pick a date for town meeting. And so it's important.
Right, which is again why I keep kind of beating this drum. But the suggestion to me is informed a bit by, even more informed now, by looking at even past budget preparation, town meeting preparation schedules. you know, the last time, I think the schedule I was looking at, we had an April town meeting was 2020, I think. And for our own purposes and understanding where we are staff-wise, where we have a fairly new finance director who has not been independently through an entire budget cycle. We're sadly losing Jackie, which I don't think I have to tell anyone, you know, what impact that could have on our budget preparation. And I don't want to say, I keep saying a new TA. I don't mean, again, I'll say it every time, I don't mean that he's new to TA land, but certainly to town. I'm looking at some of the schedule and some things that are on here to be done in September. I don't know where they are, but we're behind. And that's not a criticism, that's just the reality of where we are. And even into October. So there's that reality of a reduced amount of very important staff, or, you know, a lack of experience in Wenham of some important staff, and the fact that we're already behind. And then I did get some input from some folks in the school district that the April town meeting does put some of their statutory dates, can put some of their statutory dates in at awkward times, decisions that have to be made just before or after holidays, or conversations that should be happening that are, you know, there's not enough time for. So I don't have a very strong opinion on the decision, but I would like, I guess I'm asking the board for an okay to sort of socialize this with the FinCom, with the school committee, with obviously Hamilton. That's probably one of the biggest issues, just to see if any of these, some of these are very Wenham centric issues, but some are not. So I guess I'm just asking for the board's sort of blessing to socialize this over the next month, because honestly, I think that
Catherine, one other piece of information to add to this, I spoke with Joe, the town manager in Hamilton today about where they were going to be scheduling their town meeting. He indicated that their date is the same as ours, the first Saturday in April, and that, you know, while they still want to reserve the right to change it should there be any other variants that come up with COVID or what have you. But as of now, they are aiming for that target date. And I know that is also an important date to coordinate as well. So just to give you the update on the Hamilton side in terms of what they're looking at.
yeah, I guess I'm sure that's true, because in general, we would just, you know, kind of roll on. But I think an opportunity to perhaps for Hamilton to understand why, and if there is a creative way, because I think the issue with Hamilton is the election, not the actual town meeting, but the fact that the election has to be, I think, on the same day. But I don't know if there are any creative solutions to that. So, as I said, I'd like to hear from Diane and Gary if you think there's no way, you're not interested in pursuing this any further with anyone, we'll just leave it. But if there's room to just ask some questions and to talk to some other groups, I would like to do that.
Gary, what do you think?
I go first.
Mhm.
Well, I think, you know, the bylaw is pretty clear that it has to be some sort of special reason to change it. And, you know, I'm looking at the calendar, 16th and 23rd of April are out because it brackets the spring break. And I think that takes away a lot of participation. So it's either early April or you slip it to May. And I'm thinking that, you know, the real issue here is, you know, not the particular date, but we need to make a decision, because everything else that the town is working towards, budget, FinCom and so forth, are dependent upon this date. So, you know, we're 3 months into the calendar year, and FinCom and so forth really don't even have a calendar yet. So if we need coordination time, let's do it, but let's make this decision on the 5th of October at the latest. That's my point.
Yeah, I don't know. I like getting it done early in the year. I know it's difficult for all the other departments, the FinCom, and I didn't realize it was difficult for the school. And then I think with potential COVID issues, it's always a little bit warmer in May than in April. So I guess maybe we should investigate, but I agree with Gary and make a decision next week for sure, or next meeting for sure.
Well, I think it'll be hard. I think we could make a decision, but since this involves the schools and the towns, to get all three entities to come up with a decision in 2 weeks. I hear you, what you're saying. Everybody wants to know. Everybody keeps saying to me, well, I've got this schedule and it says April, and if we change it, the whole schedule will change. Well, I get that, but I could pull out a May one if someone wants it, because we've got one of those too. So I get the urgency. Anyway,
I'm just concerned
kinda-
that, you know, we defer the decision based upon possible deference to other entities here. And I mean, each of those entities, Hamilton and the schools, have known for years what the bylaw says. They should already have their calendar set up on that track. So let's go ahead and I'd say just go to April. And if there's real squawk coming back, okay, we can adjust, but we need to get this in place so that our town staff and our people and our citizens know to set that date aside. Because, you know, what the school committee needs to get its job done, and they have the calendar already in place. They don't need another month. They know what it is. It's due April.
Well,
So if I may,
yeah, go ahead, Diane.
Never mind. I forgot what I was going to say.
So I'm going to drop this because I'm hitting my head against the wall and it's not that important to me. But I will say that for future reference, Gary, the bylaw does not mandate this. It literally every year gives the select board, and this is for you guys going forward,
Well, that's right.
the
But
ability to change it for anything that suits the public convenience.
Yes.
So if getting it done in time, having enough time to actually put together a good meeting is convenient for the public, that's a good enough reason.
Right.
But
yeah, I agree on that. But, you know, let's get the decision made. I mean, we've had, this is the third time this has come up, and we don't get any feedback from the school committee. We've coordinated with the town of Hamilton, as I understand. So let's pick a date.
Well, so, okay, I think I will at least talk to some folks on the school committee, or the chair and the finance person, but your input from Joe in Hamilton, is that Joe's input or is that the Hamilton Board of Selectmen's input? Do you think there have been any discussions at the select board?
Yeah,
What are
you know, that's
Board of
my
Selectmen
understanding from the conversations that he's had with them, because it's I don't think it's come up with them because they've had the April 2nd date. You know, the thing that the caveat he did make was that, again, you know, if the COVID situation continues to, you know, continues on, there are other variants and other material reasons as to why you would want to push town meeting back to, say, May, June, whatever it might be. Then, you know, you'd still, you know, they could still reserve that right if necessary for public health reasons. But as of now, you know, that's, you know, that was the perspective of both Joe and at least the, I believe at least the chair. But I don't want to say that definitively.
Okay.
So I think Jackie had her hand up as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jackie.
I want to say too, so Gary had made a comment earlier about how the fact that, you know, we're 3 months into the fiscal year and this could put us behind. And I think we've had so many funny years the past couple of years that, just to kind of put it in perspective, you know, the budget calendar that has been started is started because internally staff likes to start it now, because we're trying to plan not only our professional but the rest of our lives. And I say this to, you know, Ryan and Jamie's benefit. You know, they're going to be the ones that are here, but I will say that, you know, the past couple of years have started very early, and I think that's made for a frustrating budget cycle across the board, not because we didn't have enough time or because we weren't getting the numbers we needed. It's just that we were meeting too much for too long a period of time. So I think knowing that, keeping that in mind for the staff, it's helpful to know in the fall when the town meeting is going to be. But I would just say from my contextual knowledge, keeping in mind that it doesn't always benefit to have a longer budget process. There is too short of a process, but too long can also be very taxing. The same way that too many weekly meetings in a row during the process can be taxing because there's not enough time in between the meetings for staff to do the follow-up and do the work. The same way we experienced when we had weekly select board meetings during the early parts of the pandemic, and it burned us out very quickly as elected officials and as staff, because there's just no break from meeting to meeting. So there's something to keep in mind contextually is that, for staff, it's helpful for us, to Gary's point, to have a date by October 5th, but we're by no means behind at this point in the budget process. And I think, at the end of the day, the process is the process, and when we have it is when we have it. But, it's the not meeting every single week and not having too extended of a budget process that I find was what was burning out staff, was that weekly meeting cycle, and having a very extended budget process is what was creating a lot of staff burnout because we couldn't focus on anything but. So that's just something to keep in mind going forward, is that those are not they're not singular factors in this discussion, but just something I would encourage the board to keep in mind with it being Ryan's first process with Wenham. He knows budgets, he knows municipal budgets, he's been doing this for a long time, but just for us to think about that being our past few years' experience.
So I think it's probably reasonable to say tonight, because nobody wants to spend any more time, including myself, on this, that we are going to go ahead with an April, we'll go ahead with our April budget. But that being said, FinCom is meeting tomorrow. They seem to be the keeper of the budget calendar. I really would like to see it now. I've seen one, and I've been very nervous about the one that I've seen that proposes an April budget, because there's a lot to do. But fine, if folks think that they can do that and we can get it done, and it's not, and it's going to be productive, and we as a board are going to receive the information we need to receive in order to make our policy decisions. I'm fine with that. I just, let's not belabor it. Let's just put together a schedule and make sure that we can follow it.
Okay, Catherine, just to follow up on that, Jamie and I met with Jim the other day. We did talk about that, and what's been out there in terms of the draft has been just that. But as I explained to Jim, till such point that the board comes up with a date for town meeting, there's no point to have to put everything else out. So I'm not going to have enough time to put all of that together for tomorrow's meeting. But I did commit to Jim, if we did receive some clarity tonight, which sounds like we have, we can then proceed forward and fill in dates and start working that through accordingly.
I guess based on my previous experience, FinCom and Select Board, I would highly recommend that you give that as much, that the FinCom gives that as much importance as it should have, because it is October. And by now, we would have already at least had one presentation in all the years that
Catherine, respectfully, we didn't have the date, and that's why we're
no.
So we seem to be going in circles on this topic.
I'm sorry. Wait,
now
wait
that we have the date, we can move forward. So it's just, you seem to be, it's a circular argument, respectfully. I just
okay. Not arguing anymore. Next agenda item, please.
Thank you.
I would like to see now that you have a date, I would like to see a budget calendar for our next meeting.
That's the intention, sure.
Okay.
So this next item, this is something that it's a follow-up from our last select board meeting and discussion about the assistant town administrator position. This is split up. So we want to split this up. I believe we worked this through in terms of the motion that is two separate things that we're looking to do. I'm not sure if this version in fact does that, but which one am I looking at here? So
there's two slides, Ryan, for you.
Is there two slides? What am I?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So this is the move to approve the job description for the assistant town administrator. The feedback I had received from separate conversations that I had with Diane and Catherine earlier today that may be something we want to wait until our October 5th meeting, provide feedback to us at that time or in between. And then the more important issue is the move to advertise and post to fill the assistant town administrator position because the clock is ticking on that front. So again, this is both of the two separate items, both of which we can handle differently based upon the board's desire in this case.
I requested these be separate because it seems to me, and I think I heard at the workshop that it was really important, and obviously it is, that we post this position and get it hired. And we all seem to have consensus around that. But from my point of view, there's a little work that needs to be done on the job description, which we can talk about tonight or another time. But I think the beginning of all the job descriptions are pretty generic, and my questions and issues are more around the specific essential functions. I think that the intention of, or my understanding of the intention, well, I actually think we should maybe do the other one first, because this is the one that actually says, hey, we have a position, we're posting it and advertising it as an assistant town administrator position. I'm sure Ryan will bring us up to date on why he feels that's the right thing to do. But I think that one comes first. So Ryan, if you would like to.
Sure. So this is just a recap. Jackie's last day with the town is going to be October 8th. That is right around the corner. It is going to take some period of time to both advertise and fill this position. So, I'm concerned with, what that gap might mean. So my request to the board is to be able to move forward per our discussion on Saturday and to advertise this hopefully tomorrow and begin the clock ticking on this. So it is, again, these are things that we discussed at length on Saturday, but I believe that, we certainly can come back with the job description, Catherine. What I could do is send out the current job description, the current draft job description for the ATA, the permits coordinator position, and the administrative director position to you all, so you could take a look at it and see how we got to that point. We certainly, I could then take that feedback in and present something back to you for your October 5th meeting. But as you say, Catherine, that shouldn't stop us from advertising the position now to be able to get out, on the MMA site and try to get, start getting the candidates in and start moving this process along.
Anyone have any questions or comments? I know we did talk about this, but again, I'm not sure we had well, maybe we have a little bigger audience. I thought it was important for folks to understand that there are some reasons that Ryan has pointed out to us why this position should be the same, should have a title change to maybe be more commensurate with the work that's going to be asked. So this is posting an assistant town administrator position. So if there are no questions or
I don't
comments.
think it's just a title change. It's a job change. What Jackie's doing is a lot of these positions, but she's doing a lot other things as well. So if we're organizing town hall, we're making a permitting coordinator position, and we have a assistant town administrator position. So we're not adding a position, but we're not just changing a title of a position either. We're forming a new position.
That's right, Diane. Thank you.
Right.
And I would definitely move to advertise as soon as possible. And I would dying to know, I think it's a great job description. So I'm dying to get right into that, whether we do that tonight or next time, I don't know.
I think with the job description, I can give it a little time. I want to make sure you have everything you need and send everything, because all these different pieces have to fit together. So,
right.
So in providing that all to you and then asking maybe for that feedback separately, I can then come back at the October 5th meeting, with, reflecting that input and, putting it back before you at that time. If that's acceptable to everybody.
I think that would be helpful because there have been, to your point, Diane, some changes to these positions and now how they fit together, looking at all, sort of three of them. At least from what I've seen, there's a few disconnects that I know Ryan is working on. And I think there might be some new, at least I'll throw it out there. The thing that hit me the most as this that seems to be new that I'm interested in hearing more about next time is the fact that it seems as if we're adding a stronger or a more defined HR position to the assistant town administrator. And I'm not commenting on an opinion about that. I'm just saying that to me, I started looking at the differences. So I think it would be worthwhile to have a little more time to talk about these, but I in no way would like to stop or slow down the process of trying to fill the positions.
So let's go ahead with the posting then, because, we really realize that the description on the posting is we want the perfect person and they're going to send us the perfect resume and then we'll negotiate from there. And then in the follow-on weeks here, we can actually fine tune the actual job descriptions that we use internally for the job. Is that what I hear?
That would be my thinking.
Yeah. All right. So do we need the motion or ready?
Yeah, I think that's
All right.
That's
So I move to advertise the post to fill an assistant town administrator position.
Second.
my only comment is thank you for making that change because it is a new position or a new title. So it's not the assistant. But yeah, if there's no more comments, I think we've probably killed that one with comments. So we'll go to a vote on advertising and posting to fill an assistant town administrator position. Gary?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Catherine, yes.
And if
luck
it's okay with the board, thank you for that. And if it's okay with the board, I will then, send out the three job descriptions to you, separately, get your feedback separately. I'll set a end date to provide any feedback on it. And then what we could probably do at the next select board meeting is bring back the assistant town administrator position job description, as well as the permits coordinator position for your review and approval, if that's okay with everybody.
I think it would be great to see them in totality. They do interconnect.
Sure.
Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yep.
And the executive assistant, did you want to bring that one in too, Catherine?
Actually,
Just to see
yeah.
them all.
Yeah, because
That's what I thought.
there is a lot of interconnection, obviously, between the executive assistant and the
Okay.
ATA position. So thank you for
Okay,
that.
we'll send all of that along. Okay.
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 Okay. Now I think I'm lost on the agenda because I didn't print the amended one, but I think we must be approaching
we're at
the end.
H, which is other matters. You're at the end.
Oh,
Schedule.
I'm glad to be at the end. Do we have any other matters that anybody would like to bring up tonight? If not, our next meeting, as it seems, is October 5th. It's a regular meeting, and as Jackie mentioned earlier, it will also include the public hearing on personnel policies. Are we anticipating that we would have the hearing starting earlier than 6:30, or are we going to have the hearing at 6:30 followed by the meeting? What's the idea at the moment? Ryan and Jackie, what?
I'm trying to, Jackie, do you remember what it was advertised? What time?
Oh,
was
that's,
it?
yeah.
I'm opening it right now. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Okay.
Okay. I think it was 6:30.
Yes, 6:30. So we won't be an
Okay.
early start, but we'll open up our regular meeting with the public hearing and then proceed to regular open session after the public hearing.
That's probably good. People expect the meeting to be at 6:30, so.
Mhm.
they'll
And I
tune in for
didn't
that.
know if you'd have an executive or anything that came up, so I also didn't want to fill up your calendar at that time either.
Thank you for that.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, I know. You know, week to week, you don't really ever know. Okay, so that's our next meeting. Ryan and I will continue to talk about any further updates from our workshop that either will be incorporated into our regular meetings or perhaps an off cycle meeting, so that if we need a little further in-depth conversation about anything. Please get your comments, if you have any, to Ryan/Jackie on the policies, so that we can have second reading and hopefully vote on those policies next time.
Can we assume that we're going to be meeting every other week so that we can have a schedule like October 5th, the 19th, November 2nd?
Well, first and third, it's not really every other week, but it's
First
at
and
the
third.
first and
Right.
third.
So you have a
And-
problem in November.
Right.
Well, we
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
yeah,
I would note too, we'll look at that as part of the schedule that we'll be looking at. I'd also be putting in draft select board dates as well.
Okay.
So it's for discussion, you know, we can always change it if we need to. And so
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
noted, yeah.
because we should be looking out a couple of months at least, and assuming it's first and third, but look at any kind of conflicts that
Okay.
we might have. Okay.
So can I make
Go
a
for it.
motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Mhm.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second,
Okay. All in favor, Gary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Catherine, yes. Thank you all very much.
Yeah,
We'll be
very
talking
good
to you.
meeting tonight, and thanks to Jackie that's done all the legwork, and to Ryan too, that's put it together.
Yeah,
A lot of work
yeah,
tonight.
it was a lot tonight. Thanks everyone for being patient.
All right.
We'll
Thank
see you all
you.
soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.